Jesus is the way. I just know Jesus is the truth. I just know Jesus is the life. I just know Jesus is my God. What makes you different from one another? Why do you argue about who you follow? There is no man that you belong to. There's only one God that can claim you. I'll care for you.
How you guys doing today? Jason A. Kuhn here, giving you a Fight the Deception with Real Perception Christian News Brief for November 22nd, 2013. Let's jump in here. Infowars.com, an article written by Paul Craig Roberts, The Kennedy Assassination, November 22nd, 1963, 50 years later. November 22nd, 2013 is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The true story of JFK's murder has never been officially admitted, although the conclusion that JFK was murdered by a plot involving the Secret Service, the CIA, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff has been well established by years of research, such as that provided by James W. Douglas in his book JFK and the Unspeakable, published by Simon & Schuster in 2008. Ignore Douglas's interest in the Trappist monk Thomas Merton and Merton's prediction and focus on the heavily documented research that Douglas provides. Or just turn to the contemporary films taken by tourists watching JFK's motorcade that are available on YouTube, which show clearly the Secret Service pulled from President Kennedy's limo just prior to his assassination, and that Zapruder film that shows the killing shot to have come from President Kennedy's right front blowing off the back of his head, not from the rear as postulated in the Warren Commission report, which would have pushed his head forward, not rearward. I am not going to write about the assassination to the extent that the massive information permits. Those who want to know already know. Those who cannot face the music will never be able to confront the facts regardless of what I or anyone else writes or reveals. It's a great article by Paul Craig Roberts. If you want to read the rest of it, Infowars.com. Of course, it will be linked in the YouTube description box. Let's move on here to RT.com. Air Force plans to arm 6th-generation fighters with laser weapons. The Pentagon wants to put high-powered lasers on its fleet of fighter jets in the not-so-distant future to ensure that enemies of the United States don't stand a chance against America's state-of-the-art arsenal. A request for information document posted by the U.S. Air Force on the Federal Business Opportunities website last week indicates that the Department of Defense is already interested in acquiring weaponry that could be used on the next-generation aircraft years down the road in anti-access and area denial, or A2AD, environments in order to safeguard certain interests. The Air Force Research Lab, AFRL, is requesting information describing concepts for airborne laser systems for future air dominance platforms. The request begins. The emphasis of this report is to identify potential laser systems that could be integrated into a platform that will provide air dominance in the 2030s, highly contested anti-access area denial A2AD environment. Wow, sounds like some Star Wars stuff coming. Let's move on here to Yahoo.com. China tests first stealth combat drone. Beijing. China has tested its first stealth combat drone, state media said Friday, citing online photos of an aircraft resembling a shrunken U.S. B-2 bomber and hailing the advanced toward Western-level technology. The test flight of the Sharp Sword unmanned aircraft is another step in China's year-long military buildup, with its defense spending now the second highest in the world and growing by double-digit percentages each year. It comes weeks after Tokyo said a drone had flown near East China Sea islands claimed by both it and Beijing, ratcheting tensions between the rivals up another notch. Wow, growing by double-digit percentages each year? It'll take a few years to surpass America. Let's move on here to DailyMail.com. As Islamic extremists declare Britain's first Sharia law zone, the worrying social and moral implications. As a throng of Muslim families crowd around him, Abu Izzeddin speaks in a quiet voice of his plans for the future of Britain. The tall, bearded 36-year-old who was recently freed from prison after serving a term for funding terrorism is telling in chilling detail how he wants to impose Islam's strict Sharia law on this country. At a shopping mall in Waltham Forest, North London, Muslim passersby listen intently. Some shout greetings in Arabic from across the street. Fathers push forward their young sons wearing skullcaps for prayers at the local mosque so they can get a good view of the man who is plainly viewed by many as a hero. Today, Izzeddin, the self-styled director of Waltham Forest Muslims, will march with his supporters, many of them new young recruits to Islam, as part of their campaign to make the suburban borough into Britain's first Sharia law zone. Wow, can you say coming to America? Let's move on here to the controversialfiles.net. Chinese eat baby soup for sex. It's pretty disgusting. Some Chinese people are known to be eating babies, and the news, which has been circulating through the internet and via email, is shocking the world. An email report received by the Seoul Times confirmed that news with several vivid and appalling pictures of human embryos and fetuses being made into soup for human consumption. The report went on, a town in the southern province of Canton, Guangdong, is now in focus. Chinese folks there are enjoying baby herbal soup to increase overall health and stamina and the power of sexual performance in particular. Wow. Let's move on here to Breitbart.com. Folded up apron mistaken for handgun. Mall put on lockdown. Wow. This is out of Port Charlottesville, Florida. Authorities in Florida said a reported handgun that led to a mall lockdown turned out to be a folded up apron being carried by a waiter. The Charlotte County Sheriff's Office in the Port Charlotte Town Center Mall was locked down Monday after deputies received word around 11 a.m. a man was seen carrying a handgun near the facility's JCPenney store. WBBH-TV Fort Myers, Florida reported Thursday. The mall and several nearby schools were put on lockdown while deputies searched the building. Deputies said they were unable to locate the reported gun-toting man or spot anyone carrying a firearm on security cameras. The mall and schools were locked down for about an hour. Wow, let's move on here. This is another article at Breitbart.com. OKC bomb squad says suspicious item was a burrito. A burrito caused a minor scare at an Oklahoma City police briefing station after a man brought the foil-wrapped object in for analysis. Oklahoma City Police Captain Dexter Nelson says a man discovered a thermos-type container in his lawn Thursday afternoon and brought it to a police briefing station. Nelson says the container was heavy and had tinfoil protruding from the lid, so the man considered it suspicious. The Oklahoman reports that the officers told the man to leave the container outside, and the police bomb squad x-rayed the item. The analysis determined that it was only a burrito. Now, these two articles reminds me of a latest incident that happened here in my hometown last week, where the local university here actually was put on lockdown, and the whole city was crawling with DHS, SWAT teams, and officers from 5 different departments just because somebody on the campus said the word gun. Wow. Let's move on here, and by the way, no gun was ever found. No man with a gun was ever found. Let's go on here to rawstory.com. Aldous Huxley, prophet of our brave new digital dystopia. Move on down here. Brave New World was published in 1932. The title comes from Miranda's speech in Shakespeare's The Tempest. Oh wonder, how many godly creatures are there here? Goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is, O brave new world, as such people ain't. It is set in London, the distant future, AD 2540, and describes a fictional society inspired by 2 things: Huxley's imaginative exploitation of scientific and social trends, and his first visit to the U.S., in which he was struck by how a population could apparently be rendered docile by advertising and retail therapy. As an intellectual who was fascinated by science, he guessed correctly, as it turned out, that scientific advances would eventually give human powers that had hitherto been regarded as exclusive preserve of the gods, and his encounters with industrialists like Alfred Mann led him to think that societies would eventually be run on lines inspired by the managerial rationalism of mass production, or Fordism, which is why the year 2540 AD in the novel is the year of our Ford 632. In the novel, Huxley describes the mass production of children by what we call now in vitro fertilization, interference in the development process of infants to produce a number of castes, which carefully modulated levels of capacities to enable them to fit without complaining into the various societal and industrial roles assigned to them, and Pavlovian conditioning of children from birth. It was this world nobody falls ill. Everyone has the same lifespan. There is no warfare, and institutions and marriage and sex fidelity are dispensed with. Huxley's dystopia is a totalitarian society ruled by a supposedly benevolent dictatorship which whose subjects have been programmed to enjoy their subjugation through conditioning and the use of a narcotic drug, soma, that is less damaging and more pleasurable than any narcotic known to us. The rulers of the brave new world have solved the problem in making people love their servitude. Wow. Let's move on here to Wired.com. Bioengineered. The heart is one of the easiest organs to bioprint. We'll do it in a decade. A term of cardiovascular scientists have announced it will be able to 3D print a whole heart from the recipient's own cells within a decade. America put a man on the moon in less than a decade. I said a full decade to provide some wiggle room, Stuart K. Williams told Wired.com. Williams is heading up a hugely ambitious project as Executive and Scientific Director of Cardiovascular Innovation Institute at the University of Louisville. Throughout his prestigious career spanning 4 decades, he has focused on researching surgical devices and bioengineering, and the idea for printing the whole heart from scratch was inspired by the work of one of his pioneers in both these fields, Charles Lindbergh. Wow, let's move on to the last article of the day, brought to you by MrConservative.com. Welfare Mom. I will always be on welfare and never work. During a talk segment on KLBJ radio station in Austin, Texas, a listener called in on her Obama phone to confront the radio host about their stance on welfare. Apparently, the man had been talking about welfare and how people are becoming accustomed to holding out their hand to receive free money and taking advantage of it. The woman, who identified herself as Lucy, offers a different standpoint on the situation. Lucy then begins to describe why she is on welfare and why she will never work. The 32-year-old woman lists all the support she receives, totaling over $1,200 a month, and also informs the host that her husband also receives financial assistance, but designates these family benefits. She expresses disgust and the inference that people who work are good people, and insists that she is a good person even though she is on welfare. Lucy then describes her day of lying around and smoking weed. It's the last article I got for you today. I don't want to leave you without the New World Order quote of the day, brought to you by President Andrew Jackson. If Congress has the right under the Constitution to issue paper money, it was given them to use themselves, not to be delegated to individuals or corporations. Again, that was President Andrew Johnson, and here is the proverb of the day, Proverbs 2:6, King James only. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. That's all I got for you guys today. You can check me out on Facebook at Jason A. Kuhn. You can also check out my Facebook ministry page, Romans 12:2 Transformer Ministries. And also look me up on YouTube. My handle name there is also Jason A. Kuhn. I'll leave you guys off the song I brought you in on by Disciple, I Just Know.
Serve your name, or do you serve mankind? Would you feel the same?